It was my third year exploring my education when I moved schools. It was a difficult transition for me. With the loss of my friendships and comfortable environment that I had grown accustomed to, I found it hard to grow new relationships. My new school wasn't a bad school. Its setup was user-friendly, but the other students that I encountered weren't exactly as relatable. They already had their cliques and go-to companions, and they seemed to plan to stick to them as they tended to push me away from any group activities. In a sense, I guess you could say I was the Rudolph the Red-Nosed elementary school student. I tried and tried to get into groups, changing my personality to be more likable, but then I realized that wasn't going to work. The lack of friendships and socialization brought about competition with my brother, a sibling rivalry that would end up changing my whole educational life.
Ever since my childhood, I have competed with my siblings. As the youngest of 4 children, I felt the need to stand out. I would constantly compare myself to my siblings, and I felt as everyone else did the same. I went to the same elementary school as my siblings, and I shared a high school with my sister. We shared many teachers, so I feel that many of these teachers had already formed opinions about me as soon as they recognized my last name during roll call. It would often go something like this. Teacher, Crystal Tran. Me, here. Teacher, oh, you're Teresa's little sister. I was not sure if I would be compared to them or if the teacher would be biased towards me in any way, but I felt that I had to prove that I was the smartest child. In addition to the sibling rivalries, I was in constant competition with my friends and classmates. I aligned myself with other students like me, and we would often compare grades and answers on assignments. My best friend in 4th grade got a blue ribbon for being on the honor roll, and I only got a white one. I knew we both did well for the marking period, and we would both be rewarded with donuts, but the jealousy I felt towards her achievement paved the way that would tackle my education.
While most of my schooling experience went well, I could never get through the struggle of English. Grammar and spelling always fought against my ability to form sentences in an ordered and flowing piece. In 2nd grade, my teacher suggested that I join a study group. My mother agreed. There wasn't a lot of students, only about 4, that were in our group, and all of them were male, excluding myself. We wouldn't do much except spell, memorize, spell again, read a passage, comprehend a word or two, repeat. Ever since then, I've had the stigma that I can never succeed in English. I felt that I was stupid for being one of the only people in the school that needed extra help. But even with this feeling, I had always found a love in writing and expressing myself through written word, even though I felt I couldn't.
The competition in school translated to competition in sports as well. I would make note of who ran the fastest on the basketball team, who could make the most free throws, and who was the best at making layups when we played Lightning. I would compare myself to them, and I would try to get better based on my comparisons. This also occurred when I played tennis and golf in high school. I wanted to be the best, but I knew that someone would always be better than me at something. The desire to win kept me back at practice, taking an extra hour to serve hundreds more balls than others. Sports were fun, but I knew that I could not rely on them in the future for anything other than being a hobby. School seemed more controlled. I could usually control how well I did and what grades I got based on the amount of effort I put in. However, I felt like I had hit a wall after registering for Calculus 2. I dropped out of the class on the first day. To feel so lost about what I was learning was embarrassing. It hit me that I did not have to be good at everything to be considered smart, and that a grade did not accurately measure intelligence.
When I was younger, I never really was pushed to succeed. It was more of a do what you can and have fun. But all that changed when I entered middle school. I began to make more friends, and as I did, the educational gap between myself and my brother also increased. As my grades began to rise and his dropped, they would expect more and more from me, constantly making small remarks about how they didn't have to worry about me because I'm not like my brother, or how I always do well even if I feel like I have failed. Even till this day, they continue to say similar things, not realizing the level of pressure they put on me to do better in order to live up to their expectations. The praise is a double-edged sword, cutting me down as they hold me out in a fit of glory, unrealizing of the internal battle and struggle the words cause in me.
My parents would often compare me to my siblings. They would constantly ask me questions like, your brother did this, so you should be able to, right? Or how come your sister did not have trouble with this? They ingrained a strong sense of desire in me to succeed. They did not pressure me to do my homework. They knew I would do it on my own without any prodding. However, the thought of disappointing them was a large factor that drove me. There were expectations that I was aware of, and I tried to meet them to the best of my ability. I have always felt the need to prove to them that I am the brightest of their children. I would feel so much pride by showing them that I did better than my siblings on a test like the ACT. I think they loved the idea of competition between my siblings and I, but they underestimated the amount of stress it put on me. I never wanted them to be upset with how I was doing or to worry about me, and this fear drove my efforts in school.
My last year of middle school left a huge impression on my young brain. More specifically, it wasn't the school year, but my 8th grade English teacher. I was nearing the end of the year when we had to turn in a project. We had recently watched Roots, which I barely remember except for the fact that it involved slavery and how they lived through that time. However, I do remember the project. I created a box, and inside the box was a buried one hidden within dirt. An X marked the spot. Inside the buried box was a bunch of journal entries from my fictional slave's life. Entries about her secret love life, the loss of her child, her fighting to hide her intelligence out of fear of being caught, and much more. I thought I was really clever when I made it. My teacher, on the other hand, wasn't so excited when she went to grade my work. A couple weeks later, she pulled me into the hall. Instead of anger, she came at me with surprised enthusiasm. "Jessica, I am amazed by what you wrote. Has anyone ever told you what a great writer you are?" This was a moment I will remember for the rest of my life. It was also on this day that I realized just because you might not be good at one part of a subject area doesn't mean you're not good at the whole of the subject area. My struggles with grammar and spelling, however bad, did not, and still don't, reflect my ability to write a good piece of literature. By the time we reached senior year, our places in the world seemed defined, but we now know the world is ever changing. Friends come and go, thoughts may change into theories, and mentality and purpose are at a constant rate of growth. And with all of those changes, we find changes within ourselves, ever growing.